Morning, financial professionals. I am Phil Haug, Senior VP of Sales with E4 Insurance Services, welcoming you to today's brew, building relationships every week. Thank you for those of you tuning in today for the very first time. Appreciate you taking time to participate in it. And for those of you that are regular attendees, welcome back. So, as I always like to start out the Brew Telecast or the Brew Podcast by celebrating today's national days. And I don't know. I like Corey. I like to kind of put some of these things together. I don't always have the ability to do that. Sometimes it's not appropriate to do that, like it was the other day. But this one I'm stretching here. We've got National Lost Penny. I did hear that there was an order to stop minting pennies, as I guess they cost us 2 cents to make, and they're only worth a cent. So I guess pennies are up for debate. National Tourism Day. So maybe you have to go outside the U.S. to make a penny worth something. And National Hug Day. And you know what? Who doesn't need a hug? So, and who doesn't like a hug? So, kind of an interesting three. Maybe you give a penny that you find to a tourist for a hug. Maybe that's the connection on them.
Trifecta.
But that's a big stretch. All right. So we are continuing our business evaluation lineup today with Corey Cox, Regional Director for Business Solutions from Principal. Principal has a comprehensive business analysis that serves multiple and critical functions when it comes to business planning and continuation. It can determine your company's buy-sell needs, establish a very clear framework for ownership transition, help identify key people within your business, or I like to call them one of our colleagues calls them high impact employees. And I really like that term because it doesn't necessarily always mean it doesn't have to be an owner, doesn't have to be your highest paid people, but there's individuals that have a high impact on the organization, and evaluates the needs for retention and attraction tools with key people, helps protects against potential losses that the business would face, and all around just makes a better plan. So Corey's going to dive deeper into these concepts and talk about the tool that is available to us through them. Complementary with the services that they provide. And as always, we do encourage you to use the Q&A box. Should you have any questions, feel free to enter those into the chat. We'd be more than happy to answer those things. And then also, and all attendees, as always, are going to be entered into a drawing for a CE voucher and a Starbucks gift card, and we will announce the winner at the end. So, Corey, appreciate you taking time to come in today. I did want to kind of kick off this. So a lot of times, there's always, no offense here, Corey, but carriers always come out with new toys, and it's always the newest, greatest, and best thing ever since sliced bread. And sometimes they're out there for a little while and they kind of get put back on the shelf and so on and so forth. Other tools have been around a long time. They're super successful, and they kind of last they kind of endure. And a lot of times I find that the difference between those two things of being something that's effective and something that looks cool, something that's shiny and something that actually works, is getting the results of it. I wanted to share the story real quick, kind of set the stage of it's the whole idea of what's in it for me, right? So as an advisor, as a client, like why should I use this, right? It's another step, it's another resource, it's another set of questions. So an advisor this is a case that I worked on personally. An advisor that I worked with about 3 years ago used one of the tool, the software, the planning tool that we're talking about today, the business valuation tool, as a soft opener to go to an established business to open up a discussion around revisiting their buy sell. And they said, you know what, it's been 5 or 6 years. Let's revisit the value of your business. Let's see if we need to adjust the buy sell agreement with the 4 partners. So they used Principal's valuation software. Come back with the results and the recommendations, and that advisor sat down and went through those with the group of partners. When it was all said and done, I won't go into all the details, but it all added up to around 16 different solutions that were purchased, and a total of about $330,000 worth of target premium. And the advisor re-engages with the business owners, the 4 partners, every single year because they want to go through it again and make sure that they're not getting a big gap between what they're protecting and what's valued. That's a lot of results out of one tool. So one set of questions, one output with the tool that Principal has, and $330,000 worth of commissionable target premium is I'd say that's a pretty good success story. So I know that's not, and I'd love to have that be the bar that everybody clears, but and as I'm sure you would too, Corey. But just to give you an idea, that's the difference between something that's kind of cool and something that really works. So with that, Corey, thank you for joining us, and I'll hand it over to you.
Quite the intro, and I think you kind of told the story, so I'll just sign off from here because it doesn't get any better than that. But
That's perfect. Time is money.
Yeah, no. In all seriousness, yeah, I want to talk. We've got a lot of tools here at Principal. Some I quite frankly don't use all that often, but this is one that I use on a daily basis and talk through with every advisor, and that's the informal business valuation. We have the buy sell review, and I would argue that should be done in conjunction with this a lot of the time. But today, I really want to focus more on the informal business valuation. So I want to talk through that, what that looks like. But before we kind of get into that, the question I always get is, who is a good prospect for Principal in general for these business solutions? And I'm not going to sit here and read all these pieces to you, but focus on the top line there. It's the industries, right? That's the question we always get. What industry is the best? I mean, white collar is the high level overarching answer, but think construction. When we say construction, right, we're not necessarily talking boots on the ground. The people doing the daily grind, right? We're thinking project managers, office level support, your finance and insurance, wholesale industries, technical services, law firms. You get the point, right? And then kind of drilling that down a little bit further, it's we're in the small to medium sized business, right? We're not trying to go after those 100,000 employee type businesses. In fact, our sweet spot is less than 100 employees, and even more from there. It's around 80% is less than 50 employees. And then years in business, right? We want to have some length and time there for growth and to have revenue on the books and be able to implement some of these plans. So we can make sure this is passed around. But this is a question I get on a daily basis. Who's the right fit? Who should I talk to? What makes the most sense to do an informal business valuation on someone? And then the next questions I get are why? Why an informal business valuation? How does that benefit me, the advisor? How does that benefit me as the business owner? And for the advisor, right, it's a non-probing question to go to a business owner and just, hey, are you aware of what your valuation is? Because before we can go and start trying to put together key person plans, buy sell plans, whatever it may be, we need to know what we're working with in terms of the valuation of the company, right? If we go in just trying to place a couple $100,000 of buy sell coverage for a business that's worth $10 million and we didn't know that, you're doing them a disservice and they are wildly underfunded. So ask the simple question of, hey, do you know what your company is worth? If not, no problem. Let's have Principal do a free, complimentary, informal business valuation. And all we need is 3 years of company tax returns or company financials within that period.
Well, and Corey, we talked about last week, we had Ronnie Hamilton, our new senior VP of advanced markets. We talked a lot about the Conley case. And one of the things that he referenced is, kind of the tipping point for the decision was a lack of evaluation. So, the Conley brothers didn't, and everybody's talked about the Conley case and you've heard it all over. I don't want to make the Conley brothers guilty, but, they had very specific language that said that they needed to review the value of the business, and they didn't. And that was the first question that the Supreme Court looked at and said, well, you didn't do the basics. So now we got to move on, now we got to unbundle this thing. So a lot of times you're just making a buy sell agreement compliant by just asking those questions and doing this constitutes as a qualifying event for making sure those valuations are met.
Yeah, it's exactly why I would argue that a valuation like this and the buy sell review should be done in conjunction with one another. Because if the buy sell or if the valuation is out of date, then the buy sell agreement is likely out of date unless they built in a formula into the buy sell agreement. But a lot of times we see just a stagnant number in there that says the company's worth 2 million instead of being more formula driven. So let make sure that that's updated as well.
If you could go back, if you don't mind, I know you got a couple PowerPoint slides ago. If you could go back to the last one, something kind of jumped out at me where it's sweet spots. I'm looking at so sales volumes under 3 million, businesses that are 25 years old and employees less than 100. So, I mean, that looks like every business that we have on Main Street America, right? That's the backbone
Exactly.
of the economy. But the thing I also see on that is there's two things. One, the smaller the business, the more important your people are, right? When I've got a company of 250, I can afford to lose one or two, but when I've got a company of 40, I can't, right? And then the tenure of the 25 years plus also shows me like that owner or those officers understand the importance of those people. So those two numbers really jumped out at small, established, but not your mega businesses. It's, two, three, $4 million businesses are the ones that are, they understand the need of having to retain top people.
100%. Yeah. I mean, as important as I may think I am at the principal, right? It's next man up, right? If I, have to go away or whatever it may be, if I find another job, like someone else can likely, at some point, if they're ready to step into the next role. But if you're in a smaller business, right? It doesn't really work like that. That next man or woman up, right? They're going to
Yeah.
have to go out and hire, recruit, train a brand new employee who may not have any, background in the business, right? And that costs money, and that more importantly, that
Yeah.
costs time.
Replace
So
replaceable, but not replicable.
exactly,
Yep. I
exactly.
mean, and
So
those, it was kind of cool. And you can move on from this one if you want, because I know we got to stay on
no, we're
task too. But,
good.
um, gosh, I don't know the exact number, but if I'm looking at businesses under 100 and sales under 3 million, that's a pretty big swath of the businesses that are in our communities and in our books.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not like we got like three prospects to go talk to, right?
Exactly. I think, some people get caught up in the fact that they have to go find these monster companies to implement these non-qualified compensation plans into, but in reality, we don't need to have that. These smaller, quote unquote, to medium-sized business have pretty substantial annual sales amounts that we can see there, and they are ripe for the picking in
Yeah.
in these type of plans. So no, good
Perfect.
call out. So we kind of talked about this, right? Why use this approach? Well, you've probably heard me say on past calls and when in most of us talking is it's really a consultative approach here at Principal, right? I'm not going to lead with a product because I'm not saying a product doesn't matter because at the end of the day that does matter at some point, but what matters is trying to solve for the problem at hand or what the solution the business needs, right? And
Mhm.
that starts with evaluation or buy sell review. So we complete these valuations, right? And we sit down. That's where we win and you win is when you sit down and go through this with our attorney team who completed the valuation, but more importantly with the client and the client's attorney if they want to be on the call or the client's CPA if they want to be on the call. Our attorneys aren't sitting behind the screen not looking to be active here. They want to have these conversations. And and I'm going to be real honest, the first call we have with these is typically just with the attorney kind of unpacking these valuations, making sure that the business owner agrees with those numbers and
Mhm.
then from there we do follow-ups, right? And we start unpacking and prioritizing what's most important to that business owner. And those are within these proposals. At the bottom of the proposals it outlines all the different solutions that may make sense to address. um
I was gonna say that to me that's one of the biggest bonuses or to me that's the separator right there. So it's cool that I've got good data, but then it always begs the question like, what do I do with this data? Like okay, I know what the business is worth. I know I got these people, but now what do I do with it? Right. And your guys' approach of actually coming in and really kind of simplifying a bullet point list of saying, hey, Corey, this is your 5 alarm fire. You should probably take care of that one first. And
yeah,
then down here is, if you get to it, that's kind of cool. That the recommendations that come forth from you guys are extremely helpful.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's towards the bottom of one of the last pages, like there is a checklist, a prioritization checklist. It just helps the business owner because this can be overwhelming for them when they, especially if they come in thinking that their company's worth X and it's actually Y, or on the opposite end too. Maybe they thought it was worth more, but we come in at a lower number. Keep in mind, this is for insurance purposes, right? So if they're
Yeah.
looking to sell their business tomorrow, we don't take into account the market value. So they're going to be disappointed in a proposal like this if they're looking to find out what that market value and what they can get in the open market today. However, we understand that at some point the business owner is going to either sell or transfer or gift their business down the road, and we want to
Yep.
help plan for that.
Yeah.
So
Well, and then from an agent standpoint too, because I know most of our audience is advisors.
yeah,
The reality of it is too, Corey, is that a lot of advisors are they're world class in one thing, and they're just kind of okay at everything else. So if I'm sitting down with a business owner and I'm their contact, and it's just a reality of it that we have to deal with, I might understand financial planning or wealth management really, really well, but I might not be that well versed in life insurance or disability or some of the other tools. I might be world class at life insurance and not really dabble in DI that much. So if I'm not good about something, if I'm not good at something, the likelihood of me bringing it up is pretty slim, right?
always. Yeah.
Right. So, but that checklist serves as a safety net in some regards. And this is where I kind of give a shameless plug for E4 with the way we're set up is each one of those lines we have the backing of excellent carriers like Principal, but internally we have experts in each of those lines. So if you guys come forward with a recommendation, the advisor can make the presentation or open that up and then have the reliance of working with a team of experts to come back them up on something that they otherwise wouldn't talk about. So it helps the advisor get deeper and deep in that relationship with the client, but then also serve all the needs, not just things that you're really good at. So kind of
Yeah.
it's a little self-serving, but
No, that's a
it's
great call out, and I would echo that. I mean, you guys are all of your sales folks are partner great and are on these calls and help navigate the priorities, right? And this valuation is great for all advisors,
mhm,
experts in the business market or just entering the business market. This helps you as the advisor have a team behind you to help you ask the right questions and be there when questions come in that maybe you're not as familiar with. This helps start that conversation.
mhm.
And like this slide here is just key questions that owners consider, right? Like the main one is typically what happens if an employee leaves, and then a lot of times it goes back to the business owner. Maybe we lead with key employee type insurance, but it immediately goes back to the business owner like, well, that sounds pretty sweet. What's in it for me? And I've got a success story at the end that kind of outlines that and how that took place. um, but these are just some questions that these business owners need to consider. And not going to do that video. So again, not going to spend a lot of time on this. Just know that our attorney or CPA that completes these valuations kind of select the best method based on the industry that the company is in. So
Mhm.
there's really five of them. The one on the far left is really adjusted book value, so liquidation amount. We're not going to use that for all intents and purposes of the valuation method, but the other four are going to be determined based on, again, the industry that the company is in. You as the advisor do not have to select this. Don't have to worry about that. It's going to be something that the attorney or again the CPA principal kind of selects
Mhm.
accordingly. And again, that's important because it's not just a you know black and white valuation, right? There's a lot more detail that goes into this, and we drill down as far as we can with the tax returns or the financials that we have at hand.
Mhm.
Another question we get, right? Who's a good prospect? This is principals numbers of 500,000 in revenue. I would argue that a million plus in revenues is really going to be the sweet spot. Not that you can't place, some cases on a company with $500,000 of revenue, but a lot of times they're probably looking to reinvest that back in the company directly rather than maybe place insurance on their key employees. Now that's not always the
Yeah.
case, just from what we've seen. And the attorney team, the advanced solutions team, has done over 24,000 of these valuations. So um, I
I
would
think
I
I
would
think 10,000 is the number you got to be the expert. So you guys are two and a half times the expert, right?
yeah, we got a team that's been doing it for quite some time. I talked to the director of our advanced solutions team the other day, and I think she said combined years of knowledge. Hopefully, I don't butcher this. I think it was like combined. It was might have been like 200 years of experience combined. So it's pretty substantial. They've been doing it for quite a while. They know what they're doing. Is
Yeah.
what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So success story, right? And I've got another one too. This is just one that we were able to get compliant approved. And this addressed both life and DI. So what happened was there was an engineering firm that two owners came to us. We started having a conversation. It kind of started with key person, and again, it went back to, well, that's great. Like we definitely want to do that, but we need to take care of ourselves first because without us, there's no business, right? So they after having a conversation, after doing the valuation, and there was a buy sell review that was done on this as well, we realized and they realized very quickly that they didn't have a plan in place, a transition plan. They're kind of in the middle of their careers. They're, kind of had a handshake agreement, thought all was well,
Mhm.
but they didn't take into account, what's next. How do we transition this? So put together a cross purchase buy sell for those two owners,
Mhm.
term insurance, and that led to just over $9,000 in premium. And then for the younger owner, they were maxing out all their qualified plans, so they were doing all they could with the money that they currently could. So we decided
Mhm.
to put together an executive bonus type plan where the company was able to contribute to a cash value life insurance plan that created an immediate tax deduction for that business. And now that younger owner, has a supplemental retirement type vehicle in the future to draw from on a tax free basis because of the way we structured it. We did have a conversation with the other owner. They were a little bit older. They had insurance in place for that, so they weren't in need of that. But the younger one was, and it still resulted in, again, a tax deduction for the business. So at the end, it really did help both those owners out. And again, it all started with evaluation and just having a conversation and starting that consultative process. Uh, DI wasn't placed immediately. That's I say that, and this is important, right? We don't need to sell all these plans at once, right? Let's not overwhelm the business owners with too many solutions. We did,
Right.
however, go back and have that conversation, and they are implementing some DI policies, overhead expense and IDI after the fact. So it truly is kind of one step at a time, right? You don't have to go in and place 15 cases at once. That's great if they're willing to do
Yeah.
that. Let's do it, right?
But
But if
the
if
odds
they're
of that
questioning
happening are
it, yeah,
pretty
and
slim.
yeah, right, and maybe they had a great year and they want to just do a portion of it now, with
Yeah.
their budget, right? Like, to your point, Phil, early on, they're going to want to do these valuations probably on an annual basis, or every 2 years, as well as the buy sell review. So
Yeah.
again, it opens an opportunity to have this same conversation next year and say, okay, what's new? What's changed? Who
Well,
who's new, right?
yeah, and the other thing too that we're seeing is, and maybe you guys are seeing the same thing. I'm assuming you are, but yeah, interestingly enough, I was listening to a program this morning, and the guy talked about. He said, in mining, it's we talk about a gold mine, right? It's from the date of discovery to the date of first extraction on an average mine is 24 years. So yeah, if you live, yeah, I'm assuming you're in Iowa with Principal being where that's at. You don't plant your corn seed in April and harvest it in May, right? You plant it in April and take care of it, and then you harvest it in September or October. It takes time to mature, but then if you're coming back to them every single year and you're doing these valuations, the priorities will change and it starts to simmer and marinate where that business owner is like, you know what? DI was not a concern of mine 2 years ago when we first did this, but now it's at the top of the list. My friend got hurt on a fishing trip, and you know what? Now I'm kind of thinking about it, right? So like it's you're drilling the mine shaft, you're planting the seed, you're letting it mature itself out where there I would be shocked if somebody, if we presented them five different solutions and they took all five, right? That'd almost be like, what am I missing? What doctor did you go to yesterday?
Exactly.
Right?
And
So,
and yeah, I mean, let's be clear, right? We're not saying to not have these conversations on the front end, because you absolutely should. Because the last thing you want to do is go back to them in a year and have one of their employees on disability and then come to you asking, why didn't you have this conversation with me then?
the
They may
the
not be ready
expect
to make a decision today, but at least you
yeah,
presented them their options so that they can make a decision based off that.
listen, the expectation is for everybody to get a chance to say no.
Exactly. Yeah, don't ask for forgiveness later. Just, have that documented. You talked about it and you're going to follow up on it. And then, as you can
Uh,
see here, some pretty nice premium that came from these cases too. So again, to your point, Phil, like sometimes these can take several months and if sometimes more than a year, right? But once
yeah.
you get there, it pays nicely and it just builds from there.
I
Uh
do have I did get a couple questions over here on
yeah,
the side. Two quick questions. One would be, so obviously principals valuation is informal.
yes.
What's been your experience when the business owner comes back and says, "Hey, I like this, but this is spurring us into wanting to do a formal application." What's your, or not application, but formal valuation? What has been Your guys' process, or what's been an experience on transitioning from that informal to formal?
Like if they, I mean, so they can do it. So as we know, formal valuations are 10K plus depending on the type of company and so forth.
Right.
So if they're we will steer them that way if they truly want a number to sell their business, in the next 6 months. Like that's absolutely the direction they need to go.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily have anyone that I'm aware of that we kind of recommend them to go to, but that happens
Mm-hmm.
sometimes where like we need a more in-depth number. To be fair though, if it's just for insurance purposes, I mean our numbers are within 1 to 3% of sometimes of what a formal valuation is going to look like. But again, we're not looking at separate LLCs and holding accounts that they may have their businesses in, because we're just looking at their corporation's tax returns type of thing.
Okay.
With that said, we can. That's why it's important to hop on a call and talk through this,
Right.
because our attorney team, because we are using this valuation as for insurance purposes,
Mm-hmm.
we're willing to adjust. So we've adjusted based on the Connolly case in order to capture that tax that the company may, you know, have from an estate tax issue. We can increase the valuation in order to get insurance to cover that, because we're
Be
not
pretty
using
fluid.
this for them to go out to sell their company. We're using this to justify insurance for them.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
And then lastly, because I do want to start wrapping up here because we're butting
yeah,
up against the middle of the hour here, but got another good question. I know principal, you guys kind of put your money where your mouth is from the standpoint of making the process easy and simple and understandable. So I'm working with a business owner and they've decided that they want to move forward with us and principal is be the carrier that they want to do it. Can you go into a little bit of detail on the underwriting program that you have for business owners where we can maybe sidestep some otherwise standard
yeah.
processes?
That's a good call out. So I don't have any really slides left. This is just the support page. So we just revamped our accelerated underwriting 1/1 of this year. So that it's still 3 million is kind of limit there, but we removed a lot of the mess in between. And by that I mean all the digital health data that was, if you were this age and you wanted 2.5 million instead of two, we require digital health data. We just removed that. There's
Okay.
really two brackets now: ages 18 to 40,
Hmm.
and then ages 41 to 60. So 3 million for that first group, 18 to 40, up to 2 million for those 41 to 60.
Okay.
That's accelerated underwriting. That's no labs, exams, digital health data, none of that.
Okay.
From 3 million and $1 up to 50 million, we have our business solutions enhanced underwriting program, BSEU for short. That does require labs within the past 12 months that we'd want to see, as well as an APS within the past 5 years. And look,
But the
let's not get
labs,
caught.
but the
Yes,
labs could be coming from their primary care physician, or they don't
correct.
necessarily have to go. So they went and did their executive physical or had their, I go, my birthday's coming up and my birthday present to myself is I go and get my physical
Yep.
every birthday. So that would constitute as eligible, right, Corey?
Correct. Yep. And that's important that you called out there the executive side of it, right? Because this is 150K more in salaries, people who qualify. So it's kind of built for those executives,
Okay.
and executives are likely probably in their benefits package or their executive package that they are required to have a physical on an annual basis. So they're likely going to have that information. So real quick, yes, it goes up to 50 million, but think of this as more of that 3 to 10 million sweet spot. That's where we see a lot of cases place is,
Yeah.
is that.
Perfect. I'm writing down a note here.
Yeah. So I mean that's really all I got. This page is just to show again that consultative approach, right? You got my team, Phil's team in E4 to help with the sales support, the pre-sale. We have an underwriting team at Principal as well as E4 that knows the business market. We've got the advanced solutions team of attorneys and CPAs, and then last but not least, that business market administration team who monitors and administers these on the back end. So there's a whole team. If you take away anything from this, it's let's start the conversation with evaluation, and then you've got a whole team behind you at E4 and Principal to help drive these conversations. That's all I
Perfect.
got.
All right, well, you gave us a lot, so I'd say it's
Yeah.
more than all you got. Today's timing is perfect. I mean, it's tax time. It's the Connolly thing is coming down. Everybody's visiting with their advisors at the beginning of the year, so we wanted to make sure that we're getting real time information. Our advisors, and we certainly appreciate the resources and partnership that Principal's given to us over the years. So I heard the word consultative a lot, and I read something recently that said the difference between a sales professional and a salesperson is where they place the question. So the sales professional placed the question up front, and the salesperson placed the question on the back. So, it's always good to have those uh, alignment when it comes to how we handle our customers, and that's why things are successful. So, with that, Corey, you're going to make somebody's day. Pick a number between 1 and 31.
Let's do 14 in honor of Valentine's Day here coming up. So.
All right. Well, Rebecca Fisher loves you because she is the winner of the Starbucks gift card and the CE voucher. So Rebecca will be getting you the information on that. And as always, I want to remind everybody that today's brew and our entire library are going to be shared on our brew page at e4.insurance. And today's recording will also be posted on our brew page, added to our library, and will be also emailed out to our advisors later. So anyway, we appreciate your time coming in. Next week, we have Jason Jaffers, MBA and Regional Vice President from Prudential, and he's going to learn how to have simple value-added steps that can open up doors for business owners and planning, in addition to doing annual reviews and looking at loan rescue programs to help fill in some of the gaps and unforeseen exposures that come with some of those plans. So again, we appreciate you, Corey, coming in and your partnership with us, investing your time with helping our agents grow in knowledge, providing us the tools that we can be successful with, and as always, being there to answer our phone calls and help us propel our growth. So thank you. Have a great week. And we love doing business with you guys at E4. So have a happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks all. Yep.